For those that don't know, my name is Dave Eastham. I'm Executive Director for the European Alliance of Rescue Centres and Sanctuaries. Um, and again, for those of you that don't know, EARS is a network of exotic wild animal rescue centres and sanctuaries working together to ensure high standards of care for seized and confiscated animals. We currently have 23 organisations within our network working in 12 countries across Europe. Uh, One of the key objectives of EARS is to ensure wild animals in need of housing are provided with the most appropriate care possible across Europe. And doing this, as far as we sort of see it, brings up two main challenges. The first of these is capacity. As many of you will know, finding appropriate housing for animals seized and confiscated is very difficult, and demand often outstrips supply. Um, in a survey that we conducted in 2018, it's some time ago now, but I think it's still very relevant. We surveyed 110 facilities around Europe, zoos, rescue centres, sanctuaries that were involved in taking in rescued animals. And just in that year alone, there was a reported 22,000 animals in need of housing from confiscation, seizures, or surrenders. And obviously, that's just the tip of the iceberg because we didn't speak to everyone that's involved. So one of the things we asked the people who were taking these animals in is if you have to refuse an animal, what is the reason for refusing that animal? And 70% of the time it was basically capacity. It was either a lack of space, a lack of skills, or a lack of funding. So creating capacity is a key challenge in addressing the issue, but it's not actually the main focus of our presentation today. Most, if not all, rescue centres and sanctuaries are already working at capacity. So, one of the things that EARS is currently doing to try and address that issue is to try and work more collaboratively with zoos. And I know we've got a lot of zoos with us today, and many of you, if not all of you, will be involved in rescue work already. So, after I've stopped speaking, I'm going to put some links in the chat. I'm going to put a link to a report that we've recently published looking at rescue in a number of different zoos around Europe that look at the sort of challenges and opportunities that they present, that rescue presents for zoos. I'm also interested in trying to bring you zoos together into one place so that I can keep you updated and we can keep each other updated about the work we're doing. So again, in the chat, I'm going to put a link to an email sign up if you're interested in staying up to date and keeping in touch with your fellow rescue zoos, if you like. Then that's the whole point of that email list. So I'll send that shortly. The second challenge, which is the focus of mostly the focus of the talks today, is coordination. The systems in place today across Europe that we have to link confiscated and seized wild animals with high quality short and long term care is patchy and inefficient to say the least. And if we accept, as I've just touched on now, that we don't have enough capacity as it is, then the very least we should be doing is to make sure that we make the best and most efficient use of the capacity that we do have. And where an animal needs to be housed, it's given the opportunity for the most appropriate care possible and the best care possible. So in terms of coordination in Europe, there's a lot going on, and we thought that this would be a good opportunity to talk about some of the progress that's being made and maybe talk about what could happen in the future as well to improve that coordination. So I'm really pleased that we've got two speakers here today. Cécile Erny, Executive Director of the French Zoo Association, who's going to be speaking first, and Ava Schippers, who's Head of Rescue and Rehabilitation at APP, Animal Advocacy and Protection. I'm going to hand over to them, but just to say very quickly at the start, we are recording this, and if I can ask everyone to just stay on mute, just to help us with the bandwidth. And we do have time at the end after the two talks for questions. I think probably the easiest thing is to write them in the chat because there's so many people attending, I might miss people out. And it also means that if we don't get a chance to get to your question, I can take note of them and we can get back to you with some kind of answer in the future if we can. So with that in mind, I'm going to hand over to Cécile of the French Zoo Association, who's going to be talking about an initiative in France that's really leading the way in terms of improving coordination on wildlife rescue. Thanks, Cecile.
Thank you, Dave, and congratulations for this report, this great report. So thank you very much. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can see it. I can see it. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you again. It's my privilege and honor to have the opportunity to present a pioneering model in France called SAS in order to improve coordination of wildlife rescue in Europe. So first of all, we will see the background of the service's creation, then the mission of and the aims of it, the procedure for the placement, an updated overview of the key data and figures, and the challenges we faced and the future perspectives. Since decades, in fact, without any formal or official organization and voluntarily, AFDPZ, the French Association of Zoos, together with its 106 members, are asked by authorities to find home for between 1,000 and 2,000 of confiscated wildlife animals of all taxa per year. And since in France we have 3 different ministries which can be involved in confiscation, we have no total figures at the country level, and the follow-up of the placements are very difficult. So we have also as backgrounds 2 formal documents, the IUCN guidelines for the management of confiscated live organisms, and the CITES resolution 17.8 regarding the disposal of illegally traded and confiscated specimens of CITES listed animals. And we will see that the service is a service compliant with these documents, of course. For our government, it was very important to be fully aligned with the revised EU action plan against wildlife trafficking. Under the priority 3 of this EU action plan, you have an objective which is to improve access to care for seized or confiscated live animals or plants. And 2 actions are very relevant for us. The action for 57, which aim to follow CITES guidelines for the disposal of confiscated live animals, under Action 58, which aims to expand networks of specialized rescue centers at the national level and share information about the centers at the EU level. And in the EU action plan, it said that this specific action should be implemented in 2025, so we are on time. And once again, we are fully aligned with that. So since 2010 until 2021, 3 official reports were published from the Institution of Ecology issued by the French government and asked by the Ministry of Ecology. And the 3 of them conclude the same thing, saying that we need more coordination of confiscated wild animals. And to do this, we need a focal point, a unique national focal point. So in April 2023, the Ministry of Ecology agreed on that and decided to create such a focal point. That's why in July 2024, so last year, the Ministry of Ecology published a public for tender for the coordination and monitoring of the placement of seized or confiscated live wild animals. And in October, we were notified that the AFDPZ was awarded with this public contract, and in the December last year, we hired 2 full-time positions as coordinators for the mission. So 6 months ago, we created the Wildlife Seized Animals Assistance Service. In French, we call it SAS, and it's unique in Europe. The first service like that in Europe, the second in the world, because we have the chance to have an experience from the US confiscation network with the AZDA, the American Association of Zoo. And in France, it's a national service intended for the French authorities only. Only wildlife office, customs, police, bird services, or town halls, for example, can contact us. No private owners can contact us directly. It's a unique office in charge of filing and following placements for seized and confiscated wild animals within a network of approved institutions. That is to say, zoos and aquariums, but also sanctuaries, rescue centers, universities, and so on. So the French Ministry of Ecology would like, through this focal point, to allow law enforcement, since successful enforcement often involves the seizures and confiscation of wild animals from diverse taxa, to reduce the time spent looking for a place and thus improve the animal welfare, train and share expertise on housing, handling, and transport, have traceability with dedicated records to follow numbers of taxa, maximize the conservation potential of some animals of threatened species, define quantitative indicators to guide public policies, and also participating in raising awareness. So in December last year, we compiled a validated database of institutions, all approved by the Ministry of Ecology, and this is to be updated annually. Then the coordination of the placement of seized, of found or abandoned wild animals started, and we ensured the follow-up of the placed animals and maintain their records. And in a second step, we will have to raise awareness on the issue of wildlife trafficking. And at the end of the year, we will write a report for the ministry with the animals movement and measurable indicators. The procedure for the placement is a 9 steps process. First of all, an authority is contacting the center, the service, and the coordinator is taking the call or the emails and set up a sheet, a specific sheet with reference number and all the information regarding the animals. They are looking within the database for a placement or one or more possible placement within the network. Then they are calling the institution to see if they are available or willing to take the animal during this for this case. And then after they have all the possibilities, they contact the authority, they send them all the possibilities of the placement, and then the authority is in charge of selecting the placement and is really in charge of deciding where the animal is going. We are not deciding that. Then the service is making the link between the host institution and the authority. They verify the insurance of all the administrative documents and the arrival, of course, of the animals in the institution. And at the end, they record everything in the record, and they will report this to the ministry. So what does the SAS do? The SAS is searching for placement, monitoring the placement cases, centralizing of administrative documents, and updating the institution's database. But what does the SAS doesn't do? The SAS doesn't choose the facilities, doesn't organize of the fund, the transport, identification, or official registration. It doesn't do the emission of the administrative documents. It doesn't apply the regulations specific to each species and control the owners. And here I would like to remind that placement depends on the goodwill of the facilities that voluntarily accommodate animals without any funds. So unfortunately, sometimes we have no solution for some animals. Here you can see the current status of data since 6 months. Now we have helped more than 800 animals of 87 requests from authorities. So the green line is a total number of animals from the case, and the orange line is the number of cases. You can see that on average we have approximately 14 cases per month, but this will increase since we will have the 2nd of July, our official launch with all the authorities. So of course the figures will be very much higher. Here, this diagram is presenting the percentage of individuals seized, found, or abandoned by class taken in by the SAS. As you can see, more than half of them are birds, a third of them is reptiles, and then we have more mammals and some amphibians and arachnids. Among these, you have 13% of CITES 1, Annex 1 species. 60% of them are part of Annex 2 of the CITES, and 6% of them are Annex 3. 2 examples. So the main cases are Hermann's tortoises, and in many cases, the steppe tortoises and Hermann's tortoises are found unidentified in nature. So public awareness efforts may be required. And for example, this is the kind of action we will recommend in the annual report. Another example is a gray parrot. So here you can see it him before in a private owner situation with many other birds in cage with very small cages, not very good conditions, no sanitary follow-up or so on. And after that, as a social species, you can see him with another gray parrot in a very big aviary where he could fly in a zoo. So the animal welfare is respected. Perspectives and challenges. For example, we think it would be easier to have access to EU funds, that this could help to find new solutions. We need to increase capacity building, as Dave said in introduction. We lack of funds for the transport and rehabilitation. There's also a lack of space. Of course, the quarantine facilities and the institutions are very often full. We lack information of the animals because of the situation. As you know, most of them of unknown origin or with no sanitary status, not known. And at the European level, there's a need for more housing, for increasing funding, better coordination, since the issue has no border. In fact, we may be in the situation when we need to look for a place outside the country. And I think we need to think about exporting the model to other EU member states. So here you can have our contact details if you wish. We remain at your disposal. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Cecile. That's really, really useful and interesting information. Obviously, we've been talking quite a lot, but this is the first of its kind, really, in Europe, that there's been a national approach to this that's been sponsored by the government and put into place. So it's really interesting to hear more about it. I'm going to ask now Eva Schippers of AAP Animal Advocacy and Protection to tell us a bit more about the work that they've been doing as a rescue centre in Europe to help to coordinate the rescue of animals there. Thanks, Eva.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I will see if I can start my presentation and if it all works. It's always a little bit challenging.
Yeah, Ava and I were just checking out the videos earlier on in the presentation. They might be a little bit slow, but we'll try our best. Bear with us.
Exactly. Yeah, and also the sound is lacking, so I will try to do the voice over live. So let's see if I succeed or not. Yeah, as Dave already mentioned, I'm the head of the Animal Rescue and Rehabilitation Department of AAP. I've been working at AAP for 24 years. You know, in these 24 years, of course, we have seen a lot of different situations and complex rescue cases passing by. And we have also some thoughts on how we might improve coordination in the future, and that's what I wanted to share with you. So AAP, for the ones who do not know us, we are a European animal welfare organization. We are dedicated especially to exotic mammals, focusing on primates, lions, tigers, but also smaller mammals. And what we try to do is, of course, on one hand, we try to give immediate relief and improvement of animal welfare by rescuing animals. But on the other hand, we also try to strive for a sustainable solution through better legislation or better regulation so that these situations can be prevented. And this is the first video which has subtitles, so I hope that works well. A little bit what our daily life at the sanctuary looks like. Our residents on both locations. We have one location, which you can see here, which is in near Alicante, which is called Prima Domus. And we have a location in the Netherlands, in Almere. And these are the situations where we find the animals we rescue in. they come from all different backgrounds. So some of them are confiscated, some of them are stray animals, but also animals that come from private owners who, who kind of find out that it's not a good idea to keep a wild animal as a pet. Circuses, laboratories. So there's a lot of different backgrounds for all these animals. And of course, taking in these animals has a lot of, takes a lot of organization, transport, of course, especially when it goes between borders. There's a lot of logistics involved, a lot of paperwork, a lot of time, and a lot of money, of course. But as you can see, in the end, it's all worth it to be able to give the animals a better life. And then using these examples for instance, lobby for better legislation in Brussels, but also on national level, we try to see if we can have bans for wild animals in circuses, but also the positive list. We think it's a good tool to see if you can minimize the welfare problems with animals in private ownership. And like mentioned before, the funding of it is challenging, and AAP is all funded by private money. So moving forward, that's always a bit challenging. Here you can see that at the moment, well, this was on the 1st of January of 2025. We had 284 animals in the Netherlands, mainly small mammals like degoos, raccoons, squirrels, exotic squirrels, but also a lot of different primates, baboons, macaques, ringtail lemurs, so a lot of different species. And then we had 41 chimpanzees, mostly them living in Almere in the Netherlands, but also some in Spain, and then big cats, which are all housed in Spain because of the large premises there. As you can see on the lower picture, the upper picture is our place in Almere, and the lower picture is our place in Spain. So that's more about AAP, just as an introduction. But if you look at the way we work, maybe also explaining a little bit, how the new rescue requests come in. So we register a rescue request and alerts from all over Europe. So we limit it to Europe, so not outside of Europe. But people call us, authorities call us, other colleague organizations call us when there's an animal in need, and they think we might be able to help them. And we register all this information, so we can also keep a good overview of the problems that are out there, but also the trends in these different requests. And I'll tell you a little bit about that more later. But first, the process, what happens here at the office. Rescue alerts come in, so either by phone or by email or by personal contact. And from there, we make a selection. And a part of the animals we actually take in and we rescue. And another part of the animals we mediate to other organizations. So it's not that all the animals need to come to one of the rescue centers directly, but a lot of times also there's a solution elsewhere which does fit, and then the animals can go directly. And how we make the decision is that we look if bringing the animals to a rescue center has an added value before they can go into long-term care. So the rescue center is a temporary holding facility, and we rehabilitate the animals back to good health, both mentally and physically. And of course, first, the animals have to go into quarantine so that we are very sure that they're all free of any diseases, any viruses, parasites, stuff like that. But also a lot of time, the animals have old injury or other medical problems that have to be fixed. We also look at their nutrition. There's animals coming in that have been fed on cola and crisps, or animals that are addicted to alcohol because they have been entertaining people in a bar. So all these animals have to be brought back to a healthier situation. And then, of course, there's also a lot of animals that have behavioral problems. Abnormal behaviors, stereotypic behaviors occur a lot, self-mutilation, but also for species that are social species, many of them are being kept solitary, and they really have to learn how to behave socially, and to be able to live with their conspecifics again in a social group, which is for a social species absolutely necessary for a good welfare. So all these things happen in a rescue center, and then 99% of the time the animals go through the whole situation, and they quarantine, visualization, and in the end they're ready to go. And then we look for suitable permanent housing facilities all over the world. So in that sense, that's how they come to their long-term housing. If they are in mediation, if they go the different route, then hopefully most of the time we couple two partners in our network, the one that has the animal and the one that can receive the animal directly, and then from there on the long-term housing can be established, and the final solution for the animal is there. One case which we encountered a few years ago was a big transport, an illegal transport of tigers near the border of Poland, and I want to show you what I'll tell you, and I think also what you see and the subtitles also tell a little bit what's going on here. But this was how the animals were found and stopped at the border in Poland. And we think that the fact that they found these animals was kind of a lucky shot. So probably there's much more these transports going on, but luckily for these animals, this transport was stopped. And also right on time, because I think if they would have traveled many hours more, that more of these animals would have died, because actually one of the animals was already dead when they stopped the truck. You can also imagine if the authorities find one of these situations, one of these horse trailers, that doesn't happen every day. So of course, it's difficult to know what you have to do when you're actually on the ground, and to find the right routes to be able to deal with this. Because also, imagining animals being in such a bad situation, you also have to act fast, because otherwise more animals will die. So luckily, the authorities quickly find this zoo close by. In this case, it was Poznan Zoo, and they could also help out with taking in these animals, at least temporarily, to give them some space to recover for the first bit of this horrible situation. And as you can see in the footage, they really needed some time to just to get at least back to moving around and to paying attention, start eating again. So here you can see that this is only the start of this transport. So the first few weeks getting the animals to the rescue center in Primodomus in Spain was already challenging. It took a lot of different parties. The paperwork had to be arranged, the new places had to be found, and that's only the beginning of their journey. So once they actually arrived at Primodomus, the work for our caretakers started. So I'll show you a next video of how the animals recovered and how our caretakers in Primodomus took care of them. So what we do when we rehabilitate the animals, of course, first it's important that they build up a relationship with caretakers, because they are depending on each other for good care, of course, for feeding, but also for management, and also just for them to be relaxed around people again. After such a horrible situation and such a bad treatment, it does take a lot of time for the animals to trust anybody, and also to be able to be introduced to each other again. So a lot of patience it took. And also the nice thing is that not only the animals had to learn from the caretakers to trust them, but also the other way around. The caretakers learned a lot from the animals, how to deal with such heavy traumatized animals, what steps to take. They had to be very creative to find ways to work with the animals. And until nowadays, that's still very, very useful learnings, which we got from the animals, which is really nice for future rescues. And then once the rehabilitation of the animals is finalized, our outplacement coordinators start looking for suitable zoos. And in this case, for most of the animals, a very nice outplacement address was found. As you can see, these animals went to Pistoia Zoo in Italy. Two of the other animals went to a sanctuary in the UK. Two more went to another sanctuary in the UK. And the last animal, we hope to be placing the animal soon in another nice place. So, it is quite a lot of effort, but in the end, these animals were saved and were brought to a safe home. And to stress a little bit what it entails to rescue 9 tigers, and also who is all involved, and it's really difficult to keep it a national thing, and you know almost quite automatically have to work internationally. To show you a little bit who was all involved in this rescue of these 9 tigers. Well, first of all, at the border of Poland, this is where the transport was found. These were the authorities that were involved. And then the first zoos that came to help were the ones that, 2 zoos that were placed here, the Poznan Zoo and another zoo that took 2 of the tigers already. Going back and trying to find out where this transport came from, it led us all the way to Italy. So actually, that's why there's also a lot of the partners involved in Italy, because it turned out that the breeder of these animals was situated in Italy, and the transport was on its way to all the way here to Russia. Since the route was maybe a bit strange, but because they had to cross all the way over Ukraine because, of course, of the war. So there you see that they had to cross all the way to Europe, up to Poland, north of the Ukraine, and then they would go all the way down here to the south. So, these kind of situations are never a national thing. They're especially in Europe, they're very quickly international. A lot of different authorities involved. The coordination of the transport was done from our station in Almere in the Netherlands. And of course, if you transport animals to Spain, then also the Spanish authorities are involved. Well, the rescue centers here, the transporter was involved. Once the animals were recovered, they were one part of them was again went back to Italy and found a house place there, and 2 other transports were done to the UK to give them a forever home over there. So, well, like I said, it's never a national thing. It's always an international thing, these rescues. And to show you a little bit, because this is just an example of one rescue, to show you a little bit what we encounter on a yearly basis, I made a picture of the rescue requests from the last 10 years, and there you can see that the number of requests, that's over the black bars. And actually, this is a number of animals, and remind you, these are only mammals. So we don't take, we don't take in birds, we don't take in amphibians, reptiles, just exotic mammals. So the number of animals which was rescued, asked for, the number of animals we could take in are actually the orange bars. So that kind of varies a little bit over the years. And then the number of mediations. And the mediations is something we did in the past just by encountering it and having the opportunity. But the last few years, we started also to invest in it a little bit more to see if we could expand there. Because expanding in your own facilities, well, at some point you have to stop with that because the exploitation costs are too high. And, we could build, I think, maybe one province of the Netherlands full of cages, but that doesn't mean that the problem is going to be solved. So mediation is, I think, a very good extra tool to optimally distribute the animals over at least the facilities that are already out there. And to show you a little bit what kind of network it takes to outplace, mediate, and rescue these numbers of animals. I'll show you in the next slide, and it's a little bit challenging because now I have to go to a website, and I'll take you along in our rescue and outplacement network. Just selecting down first a little bit the smaller network, and here, as you can see, here where we start is that this is the EARS network, like Dave was already mentioning. There's 23 partners currently in EARS, all quite nicely spread. There are some areas which need a little bit of attention, and if there's any good partners there, I think we're definitely open to find partners there. But we're already quite well spread over Europe, so that's nice because that's a strong network, and also we know each other very well. So there's a low threshold of talking to each other and finding solutions. So that's a good start. But of course, because the numbers are larger than we can handle as a EARS rescue network, we started to look in facilities that could help us out to take in animals. And we first, in the rescue part, we started with the one that take in animals permanently, but also maybe temporarily help out, like the tigers that had to go to Poznan Zoo, just to kind of have animals temporarily to find a better solution, and places where animals can stay for a very, very short period. So that already extends the network in Europe quite a lot. And then, of course, if you start, this is the part where we start about the rescue, but then the animals also have to find a permanent home. So adding the zoo community, at least a part of which we which we are familiar with. It is not the whole subcommunity, of course. But that already extends our possibilities quite a lot. And there also in Spain, you have some official CITES rescue center in the system they use there. So that's also something we can use to add to our network. And then here we have some additional partners of the EU TWIX network. So as you can see, the network has a lot of potential, and even for us working with the only mammals, we do need this whole network to do our work. Let's see if I can go back to the presentation. There we go. Yeah. So that is the part where just the practical part about how does it work when you rescue animals, when you have a big network and you want to try to see how can I help as many animals as possible. But what is another nice thing is that if you have all this information, that also gives you the opportunity to gather data and to also see, okay, are we dealing with any trends? Are things like where the problems lie, is that changing over time? For instance, what is the impact of new legislation, or what is the impact of other actions we do to try to stop the suffering of these animals? And with the data we gather with all these rescue requests and also with the big network, at some point, and when we go back to 2001, we started to see that the number of Barbie macaque rescue requests suddenly went up. And you see in 2004, there's a peak, and we were like over 50 rescue requests of Barbie macaques suddenly. Well, before that, there were just some, but not an awful lot. And even before 2001, I think it was rarely that we found a Barbie macaque in our rescue requests. So there was something going on, and suddenly these Barbie macaques were popular and they were coming in. So when we started to look into that, we find out that a lot of these Barbie macaques were actually really young, and they were sometimes even under a year, or at least they were still youngsters. So, and a lot of these animals were also in a very bad condition. And of course, because they were so young, they needed immediate help. We took quite a lot of these animals in some years, but we also started to look at the root cause of this problem, and where do these animals come from? Were they born in captivity? Were they maybe taken from the wild? So together with the University of Utrecht in the Netherlands, we started to research their origin. And again, we of course encountered that it's not something you only can do in your own country. You have to go over the borders, and you'll find out that there's a whole network of illegal trade going on. And in this case, we got a lot of rescue requests from France, but also from Spain and from Italy. So here, the size of the monkey gives a little bit the number of rescue requests. So France, but also Germany, Belgium, Spain, Italy. Some of the animals were actually also confiscated directly at the border, not only in the south of Spain, but also in Italy. And then going back to where the animals come from, it led us, sorry, I'm just going to take a sip of water. It led us quite quickly to Ifra National Park, where the natural population of the Barbie macaque lives. So, of course, we contacted a local NGO, which doesn't exist at the moment anymore, but at that time it did. It was MPC, Moroccan Pride Conservation. Sorry.
We've had you talking too much, Eva.
I'm sorry. I'm almost there. It's my last slide, actually, and I'm doing better now. Thank you. I'm almost there. So going back to the root cause in Ifra National Park, where the natural population of Barbary macaques is the largest, quite large, and the largest in Morocco, we found out that most of these young Barbary macaques were actually directly taken from the wild. So, well, to bring down the number of rescue requests in Europe, we had to start in Morocco. So we thought it would be good to see if we can do anything there and work together, both with local NGOs, but also with the government. So we started to train scouts in Ifra National Park. We also trained the CITES officers there to be able to confiscate animals, because there was a law in place that it was not allowed, but it was not enforced, the law. And from there we went all the way up, started training CITES officers and the SEPRONA and the different authorities involved in both Spain and also in Italy. And of course, keep rescuing animals. So in that sense, we tried to see if we could kind of challenge the whole chain. One of the extra things that, of course, came up when the authorities were in Morocco were very active in confiscating animals. But of course, that meant that these animals also had to go somewhere. So, there were no zoos that could take that many animals, because at this time we were talking about over 35 animals. They could be temporarily housed in the Rabat Zoo, but they didn't have any knowledge, but also no facilities to keep these animals longer than in their quarantine facilities. So then we started to work together with the Forest Department to build a rehabilitation and also a release center in Tasca National Park. And this is a park where in the past Barbary macaques used to live in the wild, but not anymore. So they were actually poached out already, I think somewhere in the 30s or the 40s, like a long time ago. But it is a suitable habitat for Barbary macaques still. So, working there together to build this rescue and rehabilitation and release center, I think we're now almost at the point that the first group of animals is going to be released later this year in the park. And from there on, we can keep on enforcing the law, so that the number of animals that are taken from the wild will go down. And that will, again, then, of course, the species can be, recover. The first surveys of the population in Ifra National Park are very positive. The number of young animals in the groups have gone up for the last few years. So now you see that these groups are getting a more normal and natural demographic again, and that of course is very positive for the Barbary macaque population as a whole. So that was it.
I will let you drink some water, Eva. Thank you very much. Can you unshare your screen so we've got everyone up?
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, we've gone slightly over time, but I guess that just shows how big and complicated an issue it is. Before we go to questions, we do have somebody here on the call who I'd really appreciate hearing from. It's Amanda Fisher from the Wildlife Confiscation Network, which is a very similar initiative to what is happening in France, but in the US. And I'd just like to invite Mandy to just come and just tell us a little bit about what they're doing as well.
Thank you so much, Dave. Thank you all for giving me a few minutes to speak today. Because yes, as you're well aware, what you're experiencing in Europe is not unsimilar to what we experience here in the United States. So I will speak briefly, and I'll throw a whole bunch of links into the chat so you can kind of take your time to look through. And I'll also share my contact information if you have further questions. But basically in 2023, the United States Fish and Wildlife Service entered into a cooperative agreement with the Association of Zoos and Aquariums here in the US to form a confiscations network, which created my position. So my position is funded with federal dollars here in the US to coordinate these calls when our Fish and Wildlife Service inspectors and agents encounter smuggled wildlife, or sometimes for predetermined cases where they're actively going after a known smuggler or just a general bad actor, they can call me directly, and we've created a network to make sure those animals are getting placed into the appropriate situation. And sometimes that is just emergency care very close to that point of confiscation, and then I further will coordinate the permanent placement for those animals. Sometimes it's a bit more complicated. As you know, every confiscation situation is completely different from all of the others. So our network is still technically a pilot program. I'm technically only available to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service agents in the Southern California region. Since then, my number has gotten out there, and I get calls from all over the United States from different individuals in the Fish and Wildlife Service looking for assistance. And I'm happy to help the best that I can. But as you all know, it's really based on resources. So do we have enough facilities? Are we able to vet those facilities and make sure they're appropriate? Are we able to ensure these animals have lifelong appropriate care? So what we've done through this cooperative agreement, we've created a vetting process for facilities. If facilities are accredited by the AZA, or if they're accredited by the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries, they're fast-tracked, but they still have to go through this process. And then we have a way to look at other types of facilities that might not ever have any reason to be accredited by either of those organizations. Our goal is to vet every potential appropriate facility nationwide. That includes wildlife rehabilitators and universities, very similar to what France is doing. But I think what we have been most successful with recently is the funding aspect. So as I mentioned, I'm currently funded with federal dollars. The United States is going through some transition right now and a budgetary process. So some things are a little unknown, but we have secured funding where we are initiating a grant system right now for facilities to receive up to $150,000 to put towards capacity building. So that's very exciting. So if a facility is able to build more turtle housing or monkey housing, they're able to get some funding for that. We also have a small amount that I am able to utilize to cover transport and some medical costs. So it's a drop in the bucket, but it's something. And we're definitely proving that we're able to utilize these resources. In addition to the Care of Confiscation Animals grant, the United States Congress in our House of Representatives has just introduced a bill, which will hopefully become law one day, called the Wildlife Confiscations Network Act. And that bill would codify our network at the national level, but also provide an opportunity to fund our program, that we could disperse funds to facilities that are caring for these animals. So we have a goal, a vision. We have some useful things that are happening, but it's still a long way to go. And then finally, this network is very reactionary. We're reacting to the crisis. What the program that the network sits within is called our Wildlife Trafficking Alliance. They've also created a really great program aimed to reduce demand of these animals that are coming into the United States or being poached from the US, called the Not a Pet Initiative. So I'll put a whole bunch of links in there. I don't want to take away any more time for questions, but you guys know where to reach me. So if you have any other questions, let me know.
That's great. Thanks very much, Mandy. So yeah, we've only got 5 minutes, which isn't long, but I think you touched on a couple of really important points there that's actually come up in the chat, in the questions, in terms of funding. And yeah, it's great to coordinate, but if there's no funding to pay for the transport of animals and the care of animals, then that's a big problem. And obviously securing more consistent, reliable funding through the authorities is something that is really, really necessary and needed. There's a question here from Nick, and I guess it touches on what Cecile's already mentioned about how this is a European problem. It's not the problem of wildlife rescue and the placement of animals doesn't just stop at national borders. And I guess it's a question for both of you in your experience. The approach to coordinating wildlife rescue in Europe, would you say that needs to be national plans linked together, or European sort of European level coordination? Which would you, in your opinion, would work best from your experiences so far?
I don't know. I'm not sure if I can go first, but
Yeah.
no. Well, absolutely international. I mean, there's there's only I think there's only a very, very limited possibility to do things nationally. No, so it's almost always has to be international. And I do think that it's more efficient to see if you can work all together in the same network than they have all the. I mean, it's also, again, it slows things down if you first have to go to a national network and then to an international network. If you can combine that in one network, I think it's also faster. I mean, we're talking about animals, so it's not like there's I don't know, drugs on the shelf in a warehouse. These are live animals, so you also have to act quickly.
Thanks. Cecile, just in your experience so far, I know you've been not going for too long, but in the 6 months you've been working, how have you found that need to work internationally, and obviously within Europe especially?
Well, it would be great to have, of course, a European network on coordination, but we worked on this project, on this service since, yes, more than 20 years, only for French, for the French as an EU member state. So I'm wondering how long would it be to how long would it take to to implement such a service at a European level? But if it's feasible, of course we will upload.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's one of the key points. To do this at that European level is a huge challenge. There's multiple stakeholders involved. Obviously, there are EU regulations and laws, but they're all interpreted and implemented differently in each country. So there's a lot of challenges there. And I think maybe, the possibility of trying to scope out what those challenges are and how those might work at that European level could be really valuable. I think the other benefit of that coordination side of things, and it came through in both of your presentations, was that by coordinating rescue, you're able to gather data as well, which then informs longer term planning and things. So, Cecile, you mentioned that over 80% of your requests so far have involved reptiles and birds, and that's obviously key. And that's something that comes up with us a lot, is that's a huge issue, is the number of birds and reptiles involved in trade. And I know from the EARS Network's point of view, there's a severe lack of capacity there. And Ava, again, I know that through the data you've been collecting, that you can see trends in certain animals becoming bigger. And like you mentioned, Barbary macaques, savanna cats is another issue that's huge at the moment. So the coordination brings data, which brings planning as well. So I think that's really valuable too. We're at time now, so if people need to leave, obviously please feel free to do so. I've got a couple more questions here. Cecile, Elliot from Natural Hub Centrum in Belgium, a rescue centre in Belgium, was just asking if they have outplacement needs. Are they able to contact you, or is it only for facilities or the authorities within France, or could anybody potentially in Europe get in touch if they were looking for help housing an animal?
In fact, as it is a service paid by the French government, the Ministry of Ecology said authorities can contact the SAS service. But as AFDPZ, I mean, as a French association of zoos with 106 members including overseas territories on Belgium, we are also willing to help. So if such NGOs also wish to collaborate, and we can of course share information to all our members, and if this can help, of course the AFDPZ can share directly to members the outplacement request.
Fantastic. I'm looking through the chats. I don't see any more questions there. Has anybody else got anything they'd like to ask in person? We are now at time, but if anyone had anything urgent. I can't see any hands up. I'm not actually used to having this many people on a Zoom call, so might have missed something. Okay, well, there's going to be a recording of this, so if you have any colleagues that you think might be interested in seeing this meeting later down the line, I'll share that via Eventbrite. And like I mentioned, I'll put it up in Eventbrite as well. The link to the email list for zoos interested in doing more rescue, and also the report that we recently published, looking at rescue in zoos. Because as I say, I think that's a key part of addressing both the coordination and the capacity issues regarding wildlife rescue in Europe. Okay. I'd like to thank Cecile and Ava again for their talks. Really, really interesting. And I think there's so much more to discuss here, but this is, I guess, a good start. And thanks to Mandy as well, obviously, for telling us about what's happening over in the US as well. But I guess we'll leave it for there now. And thanks everyone for attending. And yeah, hopefully we'll have more conversations like this in the future.